What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Album Club. Good to see you. Thanks for holding the fort down for me last week, everybody. And I'm Marty. Good to see you. And I've got three other awesome co-hosts here that want to jump into the action. And we'll start with this young fella right here. Kellen, how are you today?
Doing all right. Happy to have you back, Marty. Shout out to the professor who held us down in the while you were away. So thanks to Alan for jumping in.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. It was look. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I was watching it a little bit up north, but looked like y'all had a good time. It was a good time.
It was a great time. A big turnout. So a lot of Immolation fans digging that one. And let's see. So I decided this past week. So I brought out a little bit of Kentucky Doom. This is Britain Writes for Mirkala from 2010, more of a traditional Doom record. But on Echoes of Crom, guy from Cauldron Born Howie, this is his sort of Doom project, traditional Doom project. So Phil Swanson joins here for vocals, but there's Howie Bentley with an incredible sort of dewy hairdo photo in that shot right there.
It looks kind of Sasquatchy. It's a little blurry.
I know Eastern Kentucky is not really known for the Sasquatch area, but 100% the outdoors is worthy of it. So, yeah. And then I brought out some tapes, got out some cassettes here. So this is from a few years ago, 4 years ago, I guess now. But this is a project I think no longer active, called Shadow Dungeon. And I'm going to try and hold up so you can get a better image there. I have no idea how to pronounce the title of this. But about of Bosnia. This is a project by the guy goes by the Leper King. And it's like he's in 5 billion different projects. But playing this one kind of evil feasty stuff. Tons of synth, lo-fi black metal. Which is 100%. I'm always in the mood for that kind of stuff. And on top of that, this is another cassette. This is Wallachian Cobwebs. Isn't that don't laugh, man. That is 100% an on-point dungeon synth. You would listen to this.
Oh, I totally would.
You would totally listen to it, dude. He's gonna buy
the name tickled my fancy a little bit there.
But yeah, I think the same photo was used on a Drowning the Light, whatever.
And Bruce Dickinson too, I believe.
Yep.
Well, perfect. Anyway, so this is some creepy dungeon synth to bring in the season. But pulled out some cassettes. Haven't touched my cassette player in a while and thought it was time. So that's what I've been listening to over here.
All right. Logan.
Hey.
How are you? What's been going on?
Man, I'm doing good. It's honestly, this week has been a coming back down to reality.
Yep.
Of course, through getting married, and then there was a hurricane last week.
How'd that go? Was it pretty non-eventful, or?
For me, we didn't even lose power here, but the surrounding area was not as lucky. Like I know people who had water in their garage and an inch or two in the house. So it's definitely not something to mess around with. But the metal was still flowing.
No hurricanes in Michigan. Last time I checked.
the Great Lakes don't produce any or typhoons or nothing.
Nothing. All good.
Well, we'll check back in the winter.
Lots of snow,
I guess. Yeah.
Not even that anymore. It doesn't even happen that much. We get it on occasion. Anyway.
Well, shit, I'm moving. So on top of listening to this, I really quick wanted to highlight their new album, which has been on my listening radar. So Altar of Oblivion. This is In the Cesspits of Divine.
Paolo Girardi.
In the Cesspit of Divine Decay. Yeah, we got the Paolo Girardi album cover right here, which I definitely like. I honestly don't know if it fits their sound to me. I typically associate the Girardi covers with something a bit more visceral and like either thrash.
He used to do He used to do all the Manila Road covers towards the end there.
That's true.
He did the last Megaton Sword album cover as well. So
yeah, he did.
And I thought that was a unique one for him. Like
it was
how
different.
He did that one. This one seems like the normal, which is good. So if any of you guys like the album we're talking about tonight, definitely check out this one. It's honestly, to me, it's a bit more diversified. The vocals have definitely progressed a bit. So, Marty, maybe listen to this one. But yeah, this one will probably be on the end of year list, I would say. And then outside of that, I recently acquired this on CD finally. So this is one of the last Death albums I was missing on CD, and I do most of my like in-depth listening in the car. So made a lot of difference. It was fun jamming
Something to
this
forgive.
week.
You don't think she should die?
The title track is the best track. That's my take. And then a couple other, I don't know why, but I was in like the doomy mood, and maybe it was getting married, or maybe it was the weather. It was literally raining for like 2 weeks straight here, and that's, I think, what's inspired this pick. But I was playing around with also picking this album, which is Chasms by Lycus. This came out on Relapse back in 2016. So this is like a funeral doom album with a bit more orchestral elements, and yeah, it speeds up in kind of a disembowelment way from time to time. So almost picked that one, and then I almost went with a funeral doom classic, Thirgothan. Is this like the original funeral doom album? I'm not sure. Asking for a friend. Okay.
I mean, it's early. It's early. It's early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the first, if not arguably the first. Yeah.
It's pretty bare bones, but there's definitely good stuff and good moments on here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
So yeah, what have been spending?
Killer Sisters Mercy shirt.
Oh, nice. Fit the vibe.
Yeah. All right. Silver Vortex, Jim, how are you doing? Good to see you as always. What's been going on, man?
Doing good. Nothing much. Honestly, listening to a lot of Altar of Oblivion as well. We'll get into that. But aside from that, had one of those days where my misanthropy was on 10. So came home, started out with a little bit of Afterbirth, which we have covered here on Metallurgy before. I wanted to hear something angular and angry and also weird, and this definitely hits the spot. Then I just felt like molten hatred, and I needed something to kind of like meet me there. And so here we go. You'll be happy about this, Logan. And I gotta tell you, I really feel like this one and Cutting in the Throat of God they're companions to me. You know what I mean? Like this is like the pure, like, I despise humanity, and the other one is like I'm escaping from it through passing to the other side. So, but anyway, this is really, really hit the spot tonight. So yeah, I'm glad you guys talked highly of this one as well, because I'm really enjoying it, especially today.
Nice.
And then I felt like, all right, well, now, I've went through all of those dark emotions. Now I just want to go all the way to hell. So, Everast, Blood Vaults. I've shown this before on the show several times. We've covered it on the show. I don't care. This is one of my all-time favorite albums. And when I want to know what it's like to be in the abyss, this is a go-to for me. And I just love it, man. I just was sitting on my bed, eyes wide open, staring at the wall, full of hell, and it made me happy. So
that sounds like you just wrote your Christmas card for the year.
Yeah, I should go into business with that.
You should, yeah. That sounds pretty good. All right. Well, I mean, I've been listening to Creator. I mean, leading up to the stream last week, that pretty much ate up a lot of my listening time, and now I'm getting into Riot. I listened to a couple others today as well when I was out working. I've been listening to some other stuff as well, but I'm going to save it because Friday, Alan and myself, along with King Folly from Deceased and Aaron the Metal Theologian, we're doing a What's Spinning. So that'll be, I'll save some of the deeper details for that. But tonight we are here to discuss the 2009 debut album from Denmark's Altar of Oblivion, called Sinews of Anguish. Came out on Shadow Kingdom Records. Did I say 2009? If I didn't, it came out in 2009. And yeah, this was a Logan pick, and we're going to start off with Jim. What were your initial impression on this?
So I went through the whole range. At first I was like, kind of like a demo quality recording. The vocals seem a little off. The guitar's intonation seems out. And then I listened to it again. I'm like, I don't know, man. I really like this riff here. And then listened to it again, and I was like, I like the flute. And then I was like, hey, man, I think I really do like these vocals. And then I bought all their albums but one. So, I went from one extreme to the other. So I'm really, looking forward to talking about, this record tonight and how it really won me over. It was just a complete 180 from my initial spin. So,
man, Evan, you got nailed with the hurricane. So sorry. That sucks, man.
Damn.
All right, Jim. Kellen, your thoughts?
So I first heard this band back in 2016. They had a EP, I believe, called Barren Grounds. And I really dug State of Decay, which was the lead track off of that. So it kind of grabbed my attention, and probably the thing that stands out to me is, and this is probably a quality that is a defining characteristic for epic doom bands, is a vocalist that you're either completely on board with or you're not going to dig the band. I think any great epic doom band is defined essentially by lead vocalist personality. And he's an interesting character. So the vocals kind of stuck with me, and I've had over the years had a difficult time placing their sound, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. Because at first listen, they sound like an epic doom band, but there's some interesting sort of quirks going on as well that I think make them a little bit more elusive. So I was happy to see that Logan pulled this. We got another epic doom album. Here I'm pulling Scald and Procession and trying to get everyone. I guess Marty did pull the Sorcerer, so you get credit for that one as well. But
not my wheelhouse.
Not your wheelhouse, yes. So I was happy to see. I was familiar with the band, and I really have enjoyed their newest release as well. I haven't picked it up yet, but we'll get into that later on. So cool band. Excited for this listen.
All right. Well, for me, this isn't the first time I've heard this band. I've got this one, the Seven Spirits. Seven Spirits. I have one other. I can't find it. I tore this mess apart and couldn't find it, so I may have given it away. But I, like Jim, have gone through the range of emotions. I see some people in the chat as well of kind of what Tim said, 5 listens and it clicked. It was 6 for me, because the first couple listens, I gravitate to the vocals. The vocals aren't... The thing that's annoying about the vocals that bother me is he sings in this largely monotone voice. When he goes into his mid-range, and sometimes he reaches a little higher once in a while, but there's this mid-range, and it's a sweet spot for him. When he hits it, it's great, and it's nice that he can switch back and forth. It gives some dynamics, but the monotone style was so hard for me to work through. He sounds very pitchy. And I read a little chunk of a thing about them, and apparently he was an opera singer and got bored of doing opera because he was sick of singing the same songs all the time. I'm sorry, but if you're a trained opera singer, you're not pitchy. You're not. I mean, there's some annoying parts on this record. But having said that, I worked through it. Like I said, the album club thing, you got to keep at it. Got to process the record. When I really didn't feel it, wasn't really into it, hated it initially, I end up kind of liking it. And like I said, I've heard this band before. It seems like they've gotten better as time has gone on. I have not spun this Seven Spirits enough to know it that well. It's someone, I think Alan gave this to me. I don't know. This is a band that was deceptive. It started off rough for me, but I ended up kind of turning the corner and liking the album as a whole. I probably spun it a good 8 to 10 times. So I've got it under my belt pretty good. Logan, what'd you think of this? Obviously you picked it, so.
Yeah, I think my first impression can be summed up as just that, because this was a blind buy many years ago. Record store around Raleigh, North Carolina. I think maybe Alan might know it. Nice Price Books and Records. Yeah, like $10, based solely on the artwork and of course the price as well.
The artwork's cool.
Since I'm cheap, I love this artwork. We can talk about it real quick. Like we got the front, and then if you haven't seen the back yet, that's even more ominous with that figure.
Yeah,
sailing over like the destroyed World War II city. I mean, honestly, initially I didn't know what to make of it. I mean, this was pretty early on in my listening habits, and I definitely didn't see it as epic doom, which I guess we're about to debate whether this does or doesn't fall into that. I definitely saw it as like a heavier, more brooding version of like Black Sabbath riffs, but I definitely didn't know what to make of the vocals. And the atmosphere also was pretty dense over the whole runtime. And add into the fact this is a double LP, and I think we all dislike having to flip an album 4 times. So this kind of all added up that I would only spin this probably once or twice. But over the years, I definitely continued to return to it and slowly unlock different vocal passages that kind of stuck with me, different riffs that also stood out to me. And then finally, I kind of was able to dive in, probably after like 8 to 10 listens, honestly, over an extended period of time. So it has definitely become a favorite over the years, and I love the bleak conceptual nature of it and the riff writing. And like, for example, the first time I was listening to this to prepare for tonight's show, it was easy, which is different from what all of you guys are talking about. So that's how you know I've already done the legwork to get past the hurdles that are definitely a part of listening to this album. But I think this band overall and definitely this album are pretty underrated, along with a lot of different bands from the epic doom subgenre. So I wanted to take the chance to kind of celebrate it a bit more tonight. So,
you have a question for us?
And I do have a question. And do you mind if I go first with answering the question?
Just of course.
Because I want to hear your opinion, but I'm almost like trying to see if I'm off base with mine first. So the question is based around defining a subgenre, which is a favorite nerdy thing I like to do with metal. I'm sure we're all in this boat. So the question is, define epic doom. Epic doom is one of those sub/micro genres that I think is hard to define. Where is the line that separates this subgenre from regular doom or from crossing over doom into epic heavy metal or regular heavy metal? As metal taxonomists, which we all are, I'm sure, what do you think the first influential epic doom album was, and what are some high watermarks for this subgenre? So, as I said, this is an aspect of listening to and being a fan of heavy metal that I enjoy. I enjoy creating like these little subgenres and, stumbling onto new ones. And this is one that I think I'm still kind of shaping in my head. Like, as I said, when I first heard this album, I definitely didn't think, that's an epic doom album. I just heard a regular doom metal or even just a heavy metal album. And it really wasn't until probably some of these recent heavy metallurgy episodes that I think Kellen does keep bringing up. You seem to be the epic doom aficionado around these parts. That I was
Damn
like, okay,
right.
yep. And then Alan does too, because I know Alan knows this band, and I think has mentioned them as epic doom. But I want to try to get a beat on where this line in the sand is drawn, and what bands kind of pushed it forward from there to the modern era that we're currently listening to. So, from my perspective, the first band to really be epic doom is Candlemass with their album Nightfall. So, hopefully, I got that part right. This is it's like dark, but then there's still that like shred of light in there from the heavy metal vibe that kind of, the pace is still moving and still progressing at a heavy metal rate at times. So I think this, to me, is where the epic doom starts. And then I don't own any of their stuff because they're tough to find, but in the 90s, Solitude Aeternus, to me, seems to take that on. And I know they're heavy metallurgy favorites. You guys did the deep dive on them.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely give them credit for bringing it through. I don't really know of other bands that kind of played in that style. And then to me, there seems to be like a blow up of more, epic doom around the time that this album came out in like the early 2010s. So first off, we got like Argus from, I believe, Massachusetts area.
That's a pretty good record. Dwayne sent me that. That's a pretty good record.
This is a Dreadful Rick VCLT right here.
Yep.
I agree. And it definitely hits. It's also on Shadow Kingdom Records. So I think they were helping to push it. And then one of the current bands that are like the sweethearts of the genre and have actually, maintained mainstream appeal in the metal scene is Crypt Sermon. And this is their debut, Out of the Garden. So to me, this is modern epic doom, which is definitely taking it to the decibel magazine masses, if you will. So I'm interested to hear what your guys' take on the genre is, because it definitely, I feel like, bleeds over, and the line could be a bit blurry depending on what band, So
can I go next? Well, the epic doom tag. What determines if it's epic doom or regular doom? Can your vocalist sing in tune, in key? That is what I'm learning. Like when Kellen threw down the saying that Sorcerer was epic doom, I'm like, I see that never really. I was shocked to process that. I get it now, but
that was the closest thing that you have pulled that I would say could be in that category.
Yeah.
I was trying to be complimentary here.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Get a group appeal. Okay.
I just took that as a heavy metal record.
Sure.
Sure. It's just. Do I like this style of music? I like bands like Dark Quarterer. The guy isn't necessarily the best singer, but I chalk that more up to poor English. Adds a charm to it. Of course, the Gods, Manila Road. There's a weirdness to Mark Shelton's vocals, but he could sing in tune. He could sing in key. He just had a warble and a weird deranged wizard style. But there's these little quirks in both of those singers' voices that make it unique, adds charm to it. I listened to The Scald. I struggled with the vocals on that because it's pitchy. He's pitchy. And when this style of music, when your vocalist is so far out front, he's so vulnerable, he's right out in the front for everybody to hear. If you got a guy that cannot highlight, because typically the music is very slow. You're not getting a lot of flash. You're not getting a lot of, you're getting a lot of slow power chords, some note runs. You need a singer that can sing, can stand out front proudly, confidently, and carry these songs, make these songs into what they need to be. And, this Mick Mentor guy, he gets there on occasion. He does. It's just, he really dwells in this mid-range or this lower register, trying to be operatic. And it just, it's pitchy. But yeah, and the originators, I mean, it's tough. I mean, obviously Sabbath, are they an epic doom band? I don't know, but they definitely had doomy moments. Saint Vitus, which we've also covered on here before, has an epic doom quality at times. But Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus probably is, for me, the early one. I like that record a lot. It's a classic, but Candlemass for me is Messiah. It just is.
Word.
He took really good music and elevated it to something outstanding, like Nightfall, the record that Logan held up. That there's a song on there that brings me to tears, where these guys at his son's grave. Oh, I skip that song whenever I listen to that record because it gets me every time. He's just such a powerful singer. But anyway, yeah, did I write anybody else down for? Nope, that's it. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. Kellen, your thoughts?
So the question
You're smiling, so you have something to say. Smiley Joe.
I think you gave you your opinion on what you'd like and dislike about the bands, but what the question was, how do I differentiate this from regular doom?
Can you sing in tune or not?
Okay.
I said it first thing.
Okay,
Listen,
okay.
Smiley.
I understand it now.
Okay.
If the vocalist sucks, it's epic doom. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marty.
Does the production suck? Epic doom.
Doom. Okay. If the riffs
Sound like Candlemass, but like their drunk little brother.
epic doom. Got
Epic
it.
doom. Anyway,
All
go
right.
ahead, Cal.
Okay. So truly, Candlemass is the first epic doom band, right? And like what I would say is to differentiate that from other bands, let's say like Saint Vitus or Trouble that were happening at the time.
Oh, I love Trouble's another one. I love
Right.
Trouble. Early Trouble. Mm.
So I hear those bands though as a bit more traditional doom than I do epic doom.
Yeah.
And the reason being is 100% Messiah. What Candlemass did was they distanced themselves further away from the blues, in my opinion, and brought in a little bit more traditional heavy metal. Messiah's vocals, I think, personify that like drifting away from whatever Ozzy had going and doing something that is, yes, sung in key.
He sounds like a Gregorian monk.
Yeah, but he like also has that affectation of a lower vocalist that doesn't sound like Dickinson, right? He sounded totally different, and it worked well for a band that was categorically heavier than traditional heavy metal.
Yeah.
So I think that, okay, to differentiate that from traditional doom. And I think it's interesting that Marty brings up, because early on in, let's say, like Manila Road's career or Sirathungal's career, there were doomier elements. Manowar also falls into this. There's doomier elements in epic heavy metal. But what I think separates that from epic doom is that when I think of epic metal, there's like certain things you have to sing about. Like you got to have like mythology, you got to have God, you got to have sword and sorcery. There's like a certain
Doom
world.
Sword, Battle Roar. I mean, there's epic good.
Yes, there's a
Good
good
shit.
thing. I'm not
Yeah.
bad, but I think Candlemass, you think about their sound or Solitude Eternus, their subject matter is different. They are not tied to a world of ancient mythology or history, warfare that I think sort of exemplifies what epic heavy metal is. So that's where I would place them. The third part to your question, is there like another a hallmark record? So I think, I've talked about we've already the major hitters. I totally think if you're introducing someone to the genre, you begin with Candlemass and Solitude Eternus. Like that's where you start. I know we've talked about Scalds in the chat. They've already talked about Solstice. Marty brought up Doom Sword. Like there are other bands that I think from that era that start to incorporate what Bathory had pulled in, sort of the Nordland era Bathory elements. This record is one that I absolutely love and takes it a step further. You could even call this a pagan record, but this is By Honor, the first Arab altar record.
That's a good band.
Their first record here, the title track, is classic. And man, this is kind of a step further towards something that is very Norwegian, very Scandinavian, very Swedish, very pagan. But I think this band is definitely influenced by elements of epic doom. So here in the 2000s, something that you can sort of add into your quiver if you're curious about where this genre goes, and is coming around. I think this is a 2000. I could be off. 2008 record. So around the same time that Altar of Oblivion shows up on the scene. So if you want to talk about bands from the late aughts that are really appearing, this is one to keep track of.
All right, Jim, your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, first I was like, man, this is not a good question for me because, obviously, look, I came up when people weren't, calling, at least I knew no one that called it epic doom. They just called it doom metal, right?
Doom,
Even
yeah.
though the first album was called Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus from, Candlemass, we just called it doom metal, so totally makes sense though. I think that first word, translated from the Latin, added onto the front of the description makes sense though, because, there really is a lot of distinctions of doom metal. It goes a lot of different ways. And so I think it helps, but, starting from Candlemass, really, if you look at my collection, it kind of begins and ends with Candlemass. I mean, I don't really have, I don't think any other epic doom metal. It's mostly just doom metal, or like the trad stuff. Like I love Trouble, and and I finish doom metal like Reverend Bizarre, which is their own thing, as I said in the chat. But we didn't mention, I don't think yet, Atlantean Codex. I think those guys are.
Now that's epic. That's a good epic band.
Yeah, I think those guys are epic doom metal.
But the guy can sing in key and tune.
He absolutely
so.
can, and I
Very
So
pretty
it's-
singer.
it's-
Very
yeah.
pretty singer.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It's power metal then.
You said
Yeah.
pretty doom?
that's actually something I wish I had. Some I don't. It's one of those bands like, oh, I need to get that, and I just didn't pick it up. But it wasn't that long ago, just a few months ago. I was listening to one of their albums, and I was like, man, this is really solid. But yeah, so for me, it's it's only like kind of recently where I've started kind of understanding, not really understanding, but like seeing like, oh yeah, this makes sense to put this over here. But none of it, for the most part, really has like inspired me to buy it. Like I just always go back to Candlemass. Like for me, it's the same. For it's Messiah, and I feel like talking about tonight's band, this guy was emulating or trying to emulate Messiah. He was trying to get low. He's got the vibrato and trying to get as low, but he just couldn't. When he stayed in that lower register, Marty's right. He had a lot of trouble, getting the key right, matching the guitars. I also think the guitar's intonation was out a little bit, so that probably made it hard too. But Marty, just so you're aware, he gets better and better every album. And I think on the new album, I think his vocals are in key the whole time. Like I think he's really on.
It's just this lower register he sticks in. He struggles. It's such
a
monotone.
He's not there at all. On the new album,
Yeah.
He stays mid-high.
That's good. That's a good range for him.
On the new record. I highly recommend it.
Sweet.
But yeah, I do hear what you're saying. There's a lot of lesser known bands who want to get there, vocally, and just can't. Maybe quite yet. I think, was it one of the ones we covered, Marty? Was it a Battle Roar or Battle something?
Yeah, Kellen Pick, Battle Roar.
Yeah,
Yep.
I had the same thing. I really liked it, and I bought that CD. But yeah, he was a little pitchy too,
Mm-hmm.
But still, like there was a lot of like, sincerity in his delivery, and that's what actually one of the things won me over about Altar of Oblivion. Like this guy, he's really pushing, he's really trying, and and like. What occurred to me is like, what's more metal than like, reaching for something with everything you've got and just not quite getting there, but not giving up, I think that to me is metal. And so, the guitars are a little out, the production is, really demo, like the vocals don't quite get there, but man, they mean it, dude. And if you read these lyrics, dude, like the lyrics are just fantastic and heart wrenching. And I was like, they're real, man. They're as real as it gets. And, and you got to start somewhere. And like, that earnestness that I felt just like pouring from the speakers. The more I listened to this record, the more it just really started to grab me. And I felt like I was like in the rehearsal space with them as they're trying to really hammer out these songs. And maybe they put them out a little too early, but man, I don't care. It just makes it even more metal for me. It makes it more raw and like, just from the dirt, man. And it's and what's more doom metal than that? Standing graveside by a mound of rot. The aside from that, I think I've kind of talked about the question. But yeah, we're all in agreement. I think for me, even though Candlemass's debut is the first, like for me, it starts with Nightfall. It starts with like Messiah, and then Ancient Dreams was actually the very first album I heard of theirs, and I still have the tape from when I bought it in 87? Yeah. Still have it, and man, I just love that. As soon as I hear Messiah, mirror, mirror on the wall, I just like, yeah. I love that stuff, dude. But
yeah.
Other than that, most of and I just everything that in terms of the dividing line, it's what Kellen said. Kellen, you nailed it, man. It really is that departure from that blues thing, like leaving those riffs behind. Like it's all just heavy metal. It's dark and it's unforgiving. There's no joy in it. I mean, there is joy in it, but it's not like this is not party like bouncy doom, it's not the dun dun dun, even though on the new album they do have a riff like that, which I was actually kind of liking. I'll say, hey, dun, 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 dun. But on this album,
breakdown.
Yeah, on this album, it's definitely more epic doom, and just epic doom in general, is not that, and so yeah, I mean that's what's great about it, right?
Yeah, and talking about Mick, the singer, it isn't just the fact he's a little pitchy at times. The thing that I've stated on here a lot, that when a vocalist follows the riffs almost verbatim, that really gets tiring for me, and he does it a lot on here. And the fact he's singing so monotone and he's following the riff every turn of the riff, it's kind of not very imaginative. Like Messiah, he fluctuates the pitch. He's singing. He's reaching up there for the highs. He's doing a lot to really be his own instrument. He's contributing to the whole of the body of music, whereas Mick is just singing along to the songs, and it's not really, when he does it later on in the album, when he starts bringing up higher registers in his voice, I can overlook the fact that he's just following the riffs. He's doing something that in key, and it works. So anyway, that was a little, I don't know why I put that there. Discuss the musicality and composition of Sinews of Anguish.
I think we have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll start with Kellen.
It's all bleeding over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to the kind of the point, we'll talk about the vocalist quickly and move on. I agree in the sense on this record, I feel like, and I was very surprised to come across the exact same fact on Metal Archives that he previously was an opera singer. That just, it does not sound to me like this record. There's a lot of like vocal affectation. I kept on wanting him to like sing from the heart, like who are you as a vocalist, as opposed to trying to fit a mold that he thinks he needs to sing in.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
And like he's you can tell from the opening track, you get that dual personality where he has the upper register and the lower register. Mm-hmm. But I kept on thinking, like, which one is really your voice? Like, I want to hear him just talk into a microphone and see like where his voice is.
That first song where he goes into the nasally, like sinister thing, he doesn't do that much more on the rest of the album. And when he's doing it, I'm like, I like this, but I don't love this. But when he gets to the mid range, I'm like, that's the sweet spot of his voice. I'm glad he didn't go for the whole thing. He just did the one song.
So I think to both what Jim and Logan have talked about, and as to give some sort of direction as to where they move in their discography, I think later on he finds himself and a bit more confidence as a vocalist, as opposed to trying to emulate others. I think we had the exact same conversation last time about Vigna's guitar playing. Someone who's not necessarily looking around at their peers trying to emulate others, but trying to find their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Oh, he definitely does that. He definitely does that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just move on from there. The one thing about this band that I also want to mention is they never feel like a crushing doom band to me. The guitar work in the riffing style, it's heavy, and sure, if I had to pick something, is doom, but they feel much more like Tales of Creation Candlemass for me. Like there's something that happens later on in that catalog group. The riffing becomes a little bit faster, a little bit more traditional heavy metal. And they don't feel like Nightfall, where there's like a massive sort of hammer swing to some of those riffs. This band's a little bit more agile and mid-paced, and I think that's why I always felt somewhat odd about throwing them into the epic doom category, is they don't feel like a punishing doom listen when I spin this record. It feels a little bit more sort of light-footed. So the guitar riffing there, and that's just could be choice. It makes them unique as a sound, but they don't sound quite as heavy in terms of the way they're writing songs for the most part for me. There's some nice additional elements. Jim mentioned the flute. In the middle of this album, we get, if you were going to throw this album into the street and run it over, it's going to be because of the middle of this album. We get just a like instrumental sing song with his vocals. Yeah, the Retreat into Delusion.
Oh, right? that song sucks so bad.
Oh,
God,
you guys.
They just decided to go all in. Either you're going to love my vocals, or you're not going to be on board. Yeah. And I actually I'll defend your stance, Logan, if that's one of your favorite songs.
That's your favorite song on the album? No, it's not. You're lying.
It's not. I'll defend it when my time comes around, but it's definitely not.
But if you even take away his vocals, I did like the fact that like they chose to include a different kind of dynamic instead of just playing doom riffs for 50 minutes straight. There's a little bit of like, okay, we can have some different elements to our songs. Even the song that precedes it, My Pinnacle of Power, there's some cool sort of like key shading in there. It's like a riff refrain will finish, and as it sort of trails off, some keys come in to just sort of fill in as the transition period. I thought there was some smart use of keys. So for a band that's like early on in their discography, there's some smart ideas, some interesting sort of wrinkles to their songwriting. I do want to point a consistent theme that comes up for this band is what it meant to be. I think they're from Denmark, what it meant to be from Denmark in the midst of the first part of the 20th century in terms of World War I and World War II. It's a consistent theme that comes up in their lyrical content. So what that country went through, it's often not highlighted as one that really we see as a central player within those wars, but how it affected that area, it comes in their lyrical content and the subject matter. Their most recent album is based on it. So there's few clips on this record as well. I just think in terms of the songwriting, the subject matter, it's worth including that we don't hear a lot of epic doom bands from the country, Denmark. And the fact that they have sort of delved into this subject matter and sort of consistent, it's a cool little thing to add in there as well.
I will say that Retreat into Delusions, I like what it does on the track listing and for the album. I think at that point in the album, you need a little bit of a departure. and I like the flutes. I like the musicality of it. I like the feel of it. It has a little bit of culture, a little bit of suit
That's my
and tie.
biggest defense for
And
it.
then they
right
get
there.
this guy. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening right now? Anyway, Jim, you're up next. Would you?
I thought you were, Marty.
No, that comment. I'll get to that later.
We're all kind of like grasping really what this album is. Even where our criticisms and praise intersect, it's on the same thing. It's just our takes and our like feelings about of those items are going different directions. But I feel like yes, I mean there's a lot of simplicity here. The riffs are pretty bare bones. I think they're at their best when they're really going all in on the Candlemass love, and on subsequent albums, what you're mentioning, Kellen, about them having that lighter touch is right, and that's what allows them. There's some different tempos here. They get a little quick in one spot, you know. They play. There's kind of like a major chord feel here and there on some stuff. And on subsequent albums, like all of this, I feel like the Candlemass love just like goes away. They're really more epic doom / heavy metal than just epic doom. Like I like and especially on the new record. But I like the progression. I like that they started here, like more of almost like a young Candlemass. I don't want to say clone, but like trying to kind of emulate that style. But you could see where they were already kind of like pushing out of it. You know what I mean? The lead work is a little more like major key here and there. They're playing on their some of the leads. They play on the single pickup on the front. And so it's
neck pickup.
Neck pickup, yeah, the single coil instead of the humbucker, and then it kind of clips out a little. It doesn't have that attack, and it makes that's kind of thing you hear on like rock bands, not metal bands, but here, like when it's surrounded by these like really imposing doom riffs, I kind of liked the play off of that. I kind of liked the choice. Again, they're making decisions that sort of push them out and away from like the typical epic doom metal band, and and maybe it was just by necessity, him realizing I can't be the Messiah that on subsequent albums he starts to leave this, but even so, like they're such for me a really really like authentic push, to get what they want to say out in a really memorable way that transcends, with repeated listens. Definitely not the first time. Definitely not even the second time. It was like really the third or fourth, like you guys were saying, like four or five listens in where it really started to catch me. And then I was like, hey, I can't stop listening to this. I just keep playing it over and over. Like it was intriguing me enough where I just kept playing it and playing it. And then I started listening to other stuff. And then like I messaged Logan, and I was like, hey man, I bought some of this. And then I bought another one. I bought the new one. So I'm like, well, I got 3 of the 4. I might as well just pick up the other one too. But so I feel like there is, like, even though it's young and it's sort of rough around the edges in every way, you know what I mean. What was happening here was the beginning of something really great. Like you're watching really talented individuals beginning to hone their craft, and what I heard on this record was potential, right? And it was so much potential, like grabbing me with the great leads, yes, the crazy vocals, but every once in a while he nails it, man. On the title track on Sinews of Anguish, when he says, he's singing "Save me from this catastrophe." I mean, I feel that, dude. And dude, what's more doom metal than "Oh my Lord"? I was like, yeah. I was like, I loved it, dude. I listen to that song over and over. I love it, man. And I think there's enough really cool moments like that. Like Stainless Steel, come and taste my stainless steel. I mean, that's something Messiah would definitely say. You know what I mean? I just feel like there's so many moments like that are scattered throughout this record. Great anthemic metal moments. Really awesome. Some of those leads are really good, man. The lead work on the ballad that, and, it's not a metal song, but the flute and the guitar and lead work on that one and Pinnacle of Power, like it is strong and memorable, so I feel that there's enough here to justify them being in the green for musicality and composition, even with like the misfires here and there. So.
All right, where are we at, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys all touched on a main point. I think when approaching this album, this is their debut. This is where they started, and I still can't believe that the guy was in the opera.
I don't.
Maybe it didn't go so well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe this.
I didn't want to be the jerk that said it, but
I picked it. I'll say it. Maybe this is a plan B. I honestly, I much.
I was bored singing these songs, same song. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. They were like, all right, this introductory class isn't for you. It's like, I'll go to.
Here's your participation trophy. See you later.
Yeah,
anyway.
Like I much prefer the idea of this guy just being like some dude off the streets from a bar, being like, I can sing like this.
He's not 100% horrible. I mean, it gets better the more I listen to it.
Hey man, I ordered it. So if you're listening, guy, we're saying this, but I just bought your record. So
yeah, I like the vocals. I'm not trying to take a shot, but it needs to be brought up. It is a little bit of the elephant in the room, especially on first listen. Like you guys all, I mean, even I had the same reaction on first listen. Like what's going on with his vocal performance. So it just took more uncovering, I think. And then also, if you look at it as their debut, the Candlemass worship, I think makes a bit more sense. And there is a section on the inner the liner notes where they say this album is dedicated to the musical strength of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So honestly, Kel, maybe you're right. There's a bit more of like a traditional doom or like 70s hard rock proto doom aspect to it, more so than that really hammering, epic doom. So as I said, I'm still figuring out kind of how to classify this. I just know it's definitely doom metal, and I kind of want to place it as epic doom because of the lyrical nature and like really the overall vibe, which that's the next thing I want to bring up. And I think that's how you really click with this album, is you understand that it is a concept album, and it has an overall somber mood that just carries on this concept. So it is indeed World War II, but it is a perspective from a Nazi soldier as they're invading Russia on that last final push before the fall, and everything ends for them basically. So it's an album, I think, about the realization that you fought for the wrong cause and that you're going to die on the wrong side of history as a failure. that's pretty doom right there. That's and it really lends to it. And when you listen to this album kind of with that in mind, listening to the lyrics and some of the what the songs touch upon, and in the right atmosphere, like I picked this one in the middle of like a fucking hurricane. I was like, all right, this is what I want to listen to. I think it carries and it succeeds in that context. I mean, we already touched about the vocals, but I do want to comment on them one more time just to highlight them, because I think he kind of divides it up into three different types of vocals. As you mentioned, there's like the lower operatic, which really that's when he struggles the most. Then there's the high nasally, which I love it when he brings that in, because that's like that the thing that brings the music to a higher level and kind of picks up the ante, if you will. And then there's that mid tempo in between where he kind of saves it for the choruses a bit. And I think it makes the choruses stand out that much more, and is a good songwriting technique. I think it is a sign of where they're going to go on future albums, as Jim was saying. These are all things that they started here and that they continue to progress with as they're building their discography. So definitely like keep that in mind. But I think there's a strong part here. I mean, there's no in between those three sections. Like he never goes from the, the more low operatic vocals to the high nasal and then back in like the same line. But he's not there yet. So I still think that the vocal performance is serviceable. And as you listen to it more, it starts to click with you.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. It is very serviceable. And like I said, his mid-range and his higher is in the sweet spot. That's where he needed to be on this record.
Yep.
And even the stuff that bothered me, the monotone lower stuff, about the sixth time through, I'm like, it fits. It works. It's what it needed, I guess. Even though, is it perfect? Nah, it isn't. Is that those imperfections bug me? Yeah, they do. But it's in there. It works. He doesn't sound like everybody, which is cool. That's cool.
To me, I think it's one of those where the imperfections can make the performance a little bit. Yeah. Like, not denying that they're not there, but when you're thinking of an album about like the relentless brutality of war, I don't want like a beautiful. I don't want pretty doom. Sorry, Atlantean Codex, but
their last album is so good. It's so good.
Don't disagree with that. So the riffs are definitely a true highlight for this album, though. In my opinion, I definitely get that they might be copying, but I love the tone. It's very crunchy, and the pacing is quite militant. All the riff patterns, they sound like marching to me, and they definitely are repetitious. But I think that kind of opens up the floor for phenomenal lead work. Like, I really like the lead work here. And I think the melody that's brought in by these leads helps to break up the repetitive riff patterns. And they do it on every song where they're doing this like, staccato marching riff. And then all of a sudden this lead comes over top and just, is a little bit of glimmer, a little bit of sparkle to the doom, atmosphere. So, but once again, I think the atmosphere is almost another instrument at times and really helps to seal the mood and concept, and I do want to defend a retreat into delusions. Also, I think, come on, like Alan mentioned it, to me, it makes me think of Solitude by Black Sabbath. And I like that one. I like Planet Caravan. Ozzy's not a great vocalist, right? This guy's not a great vocalist. There's a good in between there, and it helps to break up the album. Is it 2 minutes too long? Yes. Could you
it's like
off?
It's a 6 minute song.
It's a 6 minute song. It doesn't need to be 6 minutes. Absolutely not.
Man can only take so much flutes.
There's only like 10 minutes of flute, Smarty, on an hour-long album. It's only 1/6. But I still think it's important in the context of the album. So there we go. I like Changes by... Oh, damn it.
I do too, Jeff.
I
like Changes by Black Sabbath. It's a good song. All right. You guys have sized this up really well. I will say my first couple listens through, the riffs have very like a lower tier Candlemass vibe to it. And it sounded like a band that was new and young and starting off trying to do what they think a doom record was supposed to be. It's like they slid their capabilities and their ideas into the Candlemass template. Once I get, for me, the first three songs are really good, but what the hell song is it? My Pinnacle of Power is where the album really starts to open up for me. It really starts to take off and get a lot more involved and get, one thing they do to separate themselves from the Candlemass classification is the keyboards. You start getting more and more keyboards on here. It's very minimal in spots, but when they hit, it's a welcome addition. I really enjoyed that. It like Logan said, the atmosphere. It definitely added atmosphere for the album. I think the album is very well written. I like how it starts out barren and builds up with a little bit of culture and layering as the album progresses. So the way they set up the track listing, I think they did a really good job with it, and ending on that massive banger, the title track, 11-minute opus at the end, and it kind of throws it all into the pot. You got the flutes at the beginning, you got the clean guitar lines, you got the synths that come in. They did it all. It all congealed to one at this at the crescendo of the album. So, or the climax of the album, I should say. And it's a pretty well written album. They did a really good job, and I can only imagine. Like I said, I've got one other CD that I can find, and when I listened to the two that I've had, I thought these guys are pretty good. So I'm glad to hear that they've progressed, because it's a good start. It's a good start. Again, it is their debut album. Let's talk about the production. Jim.
So yeah, I already mentioned earlier, like, a first listen, I was just like, it's definitely sounds like it was a demo. It's guitars are tuned low, which is great, but one of the things that I found challenging tuning low, because I did for many years, was keeping my guitar intonation set. Because then even if you got it tuned, you're playing it and you'll just still hear a warble when you're playing an open chord and stuff. And I do hear some of that on here. I'm familiar with the struggle though, so I wasn't judging too harshly. But like that, the occasional, off key, vocal where it didn't quite match the guitars. The bass, which is kind of hard to hear. You can hear like the low end of the bass, but you can't really hear like the definition of what he's playing. All those things kind of like, production's not great, but that said, again, like this album was just a huge grower for me. And the more I listened to it, the more I just didn't mind all those things. And there's plenty of like quote unquote demo sounding albums or bands, like Dark Throne, that intentionally, made, 4-track records that didn't sound great, but they were awesome anyway. So at the same time, I have a soft spot then, for things that maybe that decidedly underproduced, or maybe even not so decidedly. So objectively, yes. I mean, this is not a full on $10,000 production. This is something that was made where I think the resources were minimal, and as they grew in their career, grew in their reach, you can tell on subsequent albums that began to change. But it's okay to respect where they came from if the music justifies, looking past that. And just as I would say Dark Throne, that's what makes those albums. I would say here, it is, the production doesn't make the album, but what it does do is not diminish like the strength of the songwriting. And being that there's like, imperfections, with the performances and, even some of the simplicity of the approach, it's still, powerful and memorable. And with that production, like, I think that those inconsistencies actually just kind of make the record what it is. It's, the production, being on the, lower end of the scale, quote unquote, sort of matches where the musicianship is, and like, you can't have, a polished turd, what I mean? Like, if there was like a crystal clear production on an album that had some like, obvious mistakes amongst its like really grandiose, successes, like with the final track, it's just not going to work. But with the production being kind of, down here where they were at this time in their musical journey, I kind of wouldn't change it, So, other than the fact that, the bass really needs some more definition, needs to be up, I got to where I liked the production, and yes, I say, a lot. Someone was giving me some shit about that in the chat last week, so go to hell. That's what I do. So yeah, I am very comfortable with the production where it is, and I think that if even though it could have been better, if it had been too quote much better, I think it would have detracted from the overall impact of the album. So I'm good with it.
Kellen.
So the production's good enough to help them when the songs are there for them. Meaning, there's like when there's good songwriting moments, it's clear enough you can hear everything in the mix. But when it becomes mundane or when there's a lack of creativity, it also reveals that those shortcomings. So I don't think it does any favors in terms of concealing where they were as musicians and songwriters at this time in their career. I like my complaint overall kind of matches the same thing with the songwriting. I wish this was a heavier band. And if you're not going to be sort of this a crushing sort of epic doom band, what you get later on in their career is you get a little bit more elevated songwriting. And I think you can, with the clarity in their production, you can hear greater distinction in terms of the individual instruments and all the different elements going on in their songs. When this band kind of goes to we're going to do a traditional doom riff here and recycles that, there's nothing else to really enjoy. Meaning I can't like revel in the weight of the riff. The riff itself is not strong enough to sort of pull me back in. So I feel it kind of leaves me wanting more often. But things of like the placement of the vocalist, whether you enjoy his style or not, I don't think it's he's not too forward in the mix. He's not too recessed. None of the instruments seem really off to me or poorly produced necessarily. But like I can hear, for example, on the last Capilla Ardiente record, The Siege, the bassist there has some runs that mix up like very sort of traditional doom riffs. So you get sort of caught up in his ability to play around a very familiar chord structure. It makes the songs more interesting. So the bass, to Jim's point about bass definition, I don't know if I just can't hear him making interesting runs on the bass in between the guitar lines, or he's just not doing it, period. But I think those kind of things it's a marriage between shortcoming in songwriting and shortcomings in musicianship that go along with the production qualities that I think are lacking here. It's not a bad production, but there's nothing really great about it either.
All right. Logan.
Yeah, I really would probably agree with Callan and Jim's assessments. I think it's a very unassuming production and kind of is a little thin. But I think it caters to the mournful dirge that is the atmosphere that really is supposed to envelop the whole album. You know, I do think it is especially thin when they start to incorporate like the keys and synths in the background. And it really takes a couple listens to be able to actually notice that they're there sometimes, just because of, you know, the predominant face of the production is, you know, the vocals and the guitars. And I think, Kellen, as you said, if the guitars aren't necessarily doing anything interesting and it is on that repetitive, more straightforward metal riff, you can lose interest, I think. And it's not until you realize that there might be keys in the background that, you know, it picks back up. But I think that the thin veil production does lend itself to the visuals and the overall vibe of this album. And that's where I agree with Jim that to me, it's not really a downfall. I think it just fits perfectly into the visual nature of this album. I do want to say that I do wish the drums were a bit more impactful. That one song we keep bringing up, My Pinnacle of Power, there's this one section where a double bass comes in, but you can kind of barely hear it. It's like it's not even a faint padding or pawing at like a pillowcase. You know, it's very much in the background, and I just wish it was a bit more heavy sounding than like a cat making biscuits somewhere. You know, so that's my main issue with the that's my main issue with the production. But I think it does make the album land as a conceptual piece about World War II, where you're almost looking at it through a veil of night on a mournful like December day in Russia. You know, it just sounds dark and bleak. So it's good, but you know, also not.
All right. Everybody gone except for me, right? Okay. Production for me. The production is noticeably lo-fi. The guitars in particular have kind of a tin can guitar sound. They sound, I don't know, but after halfway through the first song, it just kind of the way it is, and I discredit it quickly. It's kind of the sound of the album. You know what? You mentioned the bass. The whole album did not even hear the bass or consider the bass. I think I'm so focused on the vocalist because it's a point of it's a bother for me at times. So my ears tend to go to him, and obviously he's out front in the mix and the way it should be, because the riffs are decent. They're within the Candlemass worship, like a rudimentary level of that. But yeah, I'm just focusing on the vocals so much. I'm not even the drums and the bass, the whole rhythm section. I'm not paying it. It's there. I'm acknowledging the fact that it's there. Everything's held together, but I just didn't pay attention to it, which I guess would be a problem with the mix and the production. But yeah, the production isn't great. It's definitely lo-fi. It's got a tin can kind of vibe to it, but you're into the first song. It just kind of works. It's just kind of, it just works. It just, the sound of the album doesn't bother me. Least favorite songs. Let's start with Kellen.
My Pinnacle of Power and Sinews of Anguish, the closer. So,
Yeah.
I mean, those are the two favorite tracks for me. To Logan's point, even though it may be a faint pawing on the kick drums,
Making biscuits.
I think last week Jib was talking about flicking a paper or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the immolation record. We got some crazy kick drum metaphors over here, but those two tracks, to your point, Marty, you mentioned that the closer here, an 11-minute epic, kind of ties everything together. I also think it truly gets the slowest, like, on this record, meaning like it pulls to the different part of the dynamic songwriting that is a true Doom record. These very slow, heavy parts. So those are my two favorites. I actually think my least favorite here is Stainless Steel. It just there's a couple of tracks here that feel just too by the numbers, in terms of like how, like, they're basically doing Doom within the lines, and I think you may love it for its lyrical content, but the actual songwriting for me, I felt, was like less exciting. I could have said the same sort of thing for a couple of songs here, but that's my choice for least favorite.
All right, Jim.
So Kellen's wrong. Stainless Steel is awesome. Chorus is killer. Yes, they are it's Candlemass worship riffs for sure, and he follows the chorus, follows the riff on the chorus. But who cares? If it works, it sounds good, and it does, man. It does not have to be perfect. And then there is, like, at about 3:45, there's this really cool, like, interplay between the keyboards, the vocal, and guitar. All three of them are going together at the same time, and it's like a really powerful moment in the song. It kind of lifts the song up, and and just goes along with the whole vibe of, like, taste my stainless steel. So yeah, I just think that's everything about that song is metal, and it's awesome. I definitely think my absolute favorite, though, is Sinews of Anguish. I mean, Marty, you said it best earlier. Like, that's where everything that they have been alluding to throughout earlier in the album, like, it all comes together there. You've got the keys, you've got the flute, you've got the really great variety of riffs. You got killer lead playing, very melodic and uplifting, doubled over. And then I think it's his absolutely hands down best vocal performance on the album.
Yeah.
The chorus is clear, catchy.
Well, he stays in the mid range. That's why
he stays in the mid, and it just really, really right. And how every chorus in that song is just a little bit different. He adds just a little bit he twists it every time. He adds a little bit more vocal color, like kind of goes up a little bit here and there, and then so by the time he gets to the end, and he's really just going for it. And on this song, he reaches for that pinnacle, and he attains it. So absolutely a great song. If anybody in the chat, if you don't listen to anything else on this album, listen to track 8, listen to the last song, the title track, and I think you'll see them at their best, and then you can see where they're going to be. And on subsequent albums, like I said, all of those little inconsistencies go away, and idiosyncrasies go away. But it's also part of what makes this album special, so I'm good with it. I also like Cassius Belly. There's a little bit of double bass there too, about 445. I think it's one of the best leads on the record. There's a guitar melody line about 3 minutes in that's really, really cool, really memorable. So for me, it's like the latter half of the album is the best, and it just kind of keeps building from 6, 7 to 8 till it gets to the end, and it just blows you out of the water. There really isn't a song I don't like. I like Retreat into Delusions, the fluty non-metal acoustic guitar thing. Pinnacle of Power, my one asterisk there is I think the intro vocal there where there's no music and it's just him, like that's one part where the vocal still it's tough for me. I can hear he's just kind of like a little all over the place, but then when the music kicks in and the song gets going, it's really great. The keyboards kick in on the latter half of that song and sort of elevate it. For me, there isn't a bad song on the record. Every one of them has like a reason to stay within your psyche and works on this album. But definitely, it's one of those that just grows and grows until it just really, really hits it at the end, and that's why it's great.
Right on. Okay, Logan.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where you start to differentiate the songs on repeated listens, and because everything kind of blends together, there really is no bad song that could be seen as interchangeable. So I think they're all good. They all measure up. I think my favorite though is indeed Pinnacle of Power. My Pinnacle of Power, which even that section where I say it's the double bass doesn't quite measure up, I love it. I think that really is probably the ultimate high point on the album, and that's right before it gets to the halfway mark, which is the interlude track, which I'm gonna still defend one more time. The ballad, a cover of Black Sabbath's Solitude, except with weaker vocals, I think is great. I like In Dissolution, A Retreat into Delusions. There we go. Jesus. It doesn't need to be 6 minutes. I agree there. So we'll meet halfway on that. I agree with Jim. Stainless Steel is the strong song in the second half of the album, and I think it's because of the chorus first off, and I really think that's when you can tell like the vocal performance that he brings into some of these choruses really makes them stand out separate from the rest of the music. And when I'm looking at the track listing, sometimes it's hard to think about what the exact song sounds like, but as I'm listening to it in the song, it immediately comes to me, and I'm like ready for that chorus off of Stainless Steel when it does hit. And then the final song is definitely a close third best track. The title track, as everyone's saying, just brings it all together, all the distinct elements that make up this album, and really just hammers it home. So not a bad song on the album. Every single track fits into the context of this conceptual piece of music, and the high points I think are definitely high points, and even the low points break it up in a good way that I think make them worthwhile. And the flute on the title track is good. Come on, it's good.
Yeah. I'm going to agree. I think the track listing on the album, I mentioned it earlier tonight, I think it's really well done. And, the A Retreat into Delusions, it has its place, and it's a good stopping point. It's a good transitional part. It's it brings you down before they take you back up again. The flute's a solitary guitar line. Mick sounds the most opera-minded on this track, but he's pitchy, and I like what the song does for the album, but I don't necessarily like the song. It leans into the cultural side of the piece of the album. But my favorite song is probably the Sinews of Anguish, the closer. You got some traditional instruments in there like the flute, a lot of additional keyboards, which is nice. Mick duels in his mid-range. Mick is in his mid-range more, which is definitely suits the song and him very well. But my pinnacle of power, that song starts off with probably the worst moment on the album, where it's the intro with the solitary vocal lines, very lower, monotone, out of key. Ugh, it's rough. But, however, the song picks up. It's a nice range of emotion, tempos. The song's got a good flow to it. More synth lines come in. Mick's mid and higher range vocals are quite nice as dynamics. I wish he did it more. Another good song for me is Casus Belli. It's a heavy track, nice melody line, which Mick embellishes with accompanying vocals. He links up with the melody line on there, and it works really great. There's, I've been kind of ragging on the guy, but he does a lot of good stuff on here, and it's a good showing. It's a good start. There's some problems here and there, but it's their first album. The production isn't perfect. The singing isn't perfect. But it's a band that obviously has some great ideas. Anyway, Judgment, final thoughts. I think we all know where we stand. Logan.
Yeah, so this album, I think, it's rewarded me over the years. It's nothing that I kind of continuously grab for, but when the mood strikes, Sinews of Anguish is there to spread a melancholic yet heavy metal backdrop for whatever life is kind of currently throwing at me. So it's definitely not a perfect album, and let me quickly dive into the flaws so then I can explain why I like the flaws. I mean, the vocals take time getting used to, but when you do get used to them, I couldn't imagine any other vocalist on this album. There are still sections of A Retreat into Illusions where I wince, but that's it. I will say the album does blend together at times because of the similarity of the riff writing and of just the overall atmosphere. But since I do love the tone and the overall concept of the album, the concept of the album, I'm like following along with the music, so I'm able to differentiate between. So I think this is one of those albums that is rewarding as you get through multiple listens and as you're actually taking time to sit down with the music and digest it versus having it fully on in the background and like you're, maybe going on a long walk at like dusk or something with this. I think overall the replayability does go up as you listen to it more. I think if they did, one last critique, if they did shave off like 5 minutes to 10 minutes, I think that would also help with the replayability.
Well, that would be A Retreat into Delusions.
No, it would not be all of it. I'm telling you, Marty, 2 minutes. 2 minutes of that song. That's it. They could have shaved off maybe the opening of Pinnacle of Power.
Yeah, that would have been a wise choice.
That would have been a good choice.
Yeah. Let's not take away all of Retreat into Delusion, please. But yeah, whenever I am in the mood for this, it transports me away and just it hits beautifully and in a very dark fashion. So with all this factored in, I think this album is an 8.2 out of 10. So a necessary release I would recommend to people for sure when it comes to starting to explore Epic Doom or asking the question of what Epic Doom is. And, I am with Tim. I prefer Weed Eater over this as well. So we do agree there, but still a great album.
Alrighty then, Kellen.
Yep. A good record from a band that has sort of defined the genre over the past, I guess, 15 years. So this is probably not my favorite Altar of Oblivion record, but if you are new to this band and you want to kind of start from the beginning, it only gets better. And this is their newest records from the vaults. I don't know why, if it's because they're from Denmark. If they were on something like Dark Ascent or High Roller, if they would get a little bit more recognition, because you're going to see other bands or Van Records. When I think about labels that have done a better job sort of advertising their bands, Altar of Oblivion at this point deserves to be a little bit more on someone's radar. So I don't know if it's because they're from Denmark or from the labels, but they've been one of the biggest names in terms of younger bands playing in this style recently, and they are definitely worth your time. You can check out their more recent albums, I think, if you want to see how the band sort of progressed and improved. But starting from the beginning, good record from a great band.
Jim.
Yeah, I really like this. So it was definitely, didn't like it at first, and then I kept listening to it more and more, kept returning to it, kept hearing these little tidbits that kept kind of sucking me in and wanting me to kind of dig a little deeper. And then, I ended up buying this one, the third one, and the fourth one. I didn't buy the second one because I was like, okay, now I'm feeling like how Marty does when he gets, he says, hey, this new band, their records are kind of cheap. I'm going to buy everything they've ever put out.
Yeah.
I felt like I had a Marty moment. I was like, okay, I got to stop myself. I'm getting
welcome to my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
You stopped one album before. What was that shirt say? Collector
Scum.
Oh yeah, Collector Scum.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely an upward trajectory in their performances and everything like that. But I still really like this record too. Definitely recommend the new one that came out this year if you just kind of want to hear Altar of Oblivion without the youthful missteps. But this album still has something to offer, though. If nothing else, check out the title track. It's really great. The third album is the one that Marty, you have the CD of. It's way more up tempo. The bass is distorted and super loud and up front. I love it, and there's a lot of just straight heavy metal songs, which is kind of interesting. It's not. There's no Candlemass worship on that at all. It's really they're kind of doing their own thing. But I'm kind of with I want to, because I've really learned to love this album over the last week, give it higher than this, but I can't ignore the missteps. It really is an 8. But I want to give it 8.5 because I really like it. But I think if anybody listens to this and says, they'll be like, why the hell did Jim get this in 8.5? It sounds like a demo.
Yeah.
But that's how much I like it. I like it enough to give it that. But I would say, there are some issues that have to be there. But this is a band that oozes potential and then delivers on subsequent records. So I'd highly recommend checking at least one of their albums out. So,
all right. Well, for me, if we did this with only hearing the album once, it would have been a 4. Straight up. I mean, it's got a lot of little imperfections that kind of bug me, probably unreasonable, and it's in a style of metal that I don't dislike, but I don't spin a lot. But I've spun this probably 8 to 10 times, and it's up to a 6.5. And if I continue to listen to it, it's probably going to go to a 7.5. It's got the grower quality to it. And that's encouraging. And the stuff I have heard from them later on is good. So we know the path they chose, and it seemed to work out pretty well for them. So yeah, I think it's a decent album. It's a good start in a genre that's got some pretty heavy hitters, and the heavy hitters tend to influence a lot of the upstarts, which we see a bit of that here, but they work in enough of their own spirit into it that I think, it's good band. It's a good band. So yeah, that's it. Good pick.
Thanks.
It's not like something we do a lot, so it was a very cool, interesting pick.
Good. We got a 1 strong out of 3. So cheers, Jim.
Right. And I guess I'm picking for next week. And man, you're all going to suffer. I mean, I've been obsessing over this band, and I really love this new album. And I had a hard time if I was going to pick their last one or this one, and I decided to go with the new album. Came out in May of this year. It's Wormwood, The Star. This is their 4th album.
Why are we going to hate you, Marty?
I don't know. It's kind of depressive-ish. It's kind of a melancholic. It's definitely black metal minded, but I don't know. I think this is a great album, and I might actually try to get Tobias on and interview him at some point. We're going to start doing those, I guess. So anyway, Wormwood, The Star. They're from Sweden, and I dig it. It should be a fun discussion, not something we've really done much, so should be a fun one. And that's it. Show notes. So I already mentioned Friday is King Fowley and Aaron the Metal Theologian. We're talking about what we've been spinning. So there's that. Anybody else have anything coming up that they want to throw out there to promote?
Don't have anything in the hopper yet, so I can have a video, but as soon as I do, I'm sure Wednesday night you will be the first to hear it, people.
Yes, sir. Logan, how about you?
A couple things that are I'm trying to get like enough motivation to do. It's tough, man. It's tough. There will be some stuff coming up soon. I want to do a video about some 2004 albums that, I think millennials enjoy specifically. So that might be coming out within a week or so.
Jim? Anything coming?
Only thing I have coming is a bunch of Altar of Oblivion albums.
Right on. What was I going to say? Oh, we got some Wormwood people here. That's cool. There was something I was going to say and I can't remember now. Oh, I've got like 4 or 5 reviews in the hopper to be edited. I have been super slammed with work, and I'm just going to get to them when I get to them. I feel bad, but it's the way it goes. We'll get there. Lots of reviews coming on Heavy Metallurgy. Get ready because there's some cool stuff coming. Yeah, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, as always, it's a pleasure, a lot of fun. And all you fine folks in the chat, you rule. As always, we will see you Friday night. Cheers.